Hello friends, welcome again to another coding tutorial with me, Michael Tobechuku. Promises to be another fun time of learning in today's class. Today we will be learning some basics of HTML. So I call these HTML basics. We'll be learning how to create a simple food recipe web page using HTML. And as you know, HTML simply stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It is a coding language that allows us to create amazing websites. So you see all those amazing websites you see on the internet, a lot of them were built using HTML. So what we have before us in today's class is simple. So here's our outline. We'll first of all start by looking at the basic structure of a HTML document. Then we will look at the title tag. Then we'll go on to the heading tags. We have 6 different heading tags: H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, and of course H6. H1 being the largest in size and H6 being the smallest in size. Then we also have the paragraph tag, which allows us to type our normal text. Then also we'll also look at how to add an image to our web page, right? This is what the code for adding an image looks like. Then we'll create some lists in our web page. You know, lists where you can have different items on the list, right? So we have two major types of lists. We have the ordered lists and we have the unordered lists. We'll be looking at that as well. Then we'll look at how to add a link using the anchor tag to our web page. A link allows you to be able to visit another web page or another website, right? You just click on it and it takes you to another web page. Then finally, we just look at the footer tag, which is right at the bottom of your web page, just as the name suggests. All right, so we'll be looking at all of this in today's class. Promises to be a fun time, so just follow along as we go on. If you miss anything, you can always rewind and watch again as we go on. Don't forget to like this video, and also you can also share a comment and share this with your friends as we go on. And of course, you know you're my friend, so please make sure you subscribe to this channel for even more coding tutorial videos. So without further ado, let's get straight into the business of the day. So the first thing we do to get started is go on the desktop of your computer, this is the desktop of mine, and create a new folder. And why are we creating a new folder? Because this is where we'll store our files for our web page. Now, this folder will make it easy for us to be able to coordinate our work, so we don't go around the computer looking for this file or that file. Also, in the folder we are creating right here, we are going to save the picture we want to add to our web page, and this is also where we'll create our web page. So you can create the folder rather on the desktop or in document, but let's use the desktop because it's a lot easier. So I'll right click on the blank page here on the desktop, then click new and then click folder. So I'm going to call this my food recipe, right? Yeah, my food recipe. Yeah, there you go. My food recipe. Yes, I've created a folder as you can see right here. Now I'm going to open this folder, and at this point you can see that the folder is of course empty, right? Because we haven't added anything to it. So now let's open our code editor. Our code editor that we'll be using for this class is Notepad. Now here we can write the code of the HTML page that we want to create. So I'll just launch Notepad on my computer. There you go. So I'll make it full screen. So here's Notepad, of course, is blank. Now our next task is to ensure that we save this file that we just created. Ensure that we save it in the new folder. Remind me where we created the folder. On the desktop, right? Perfect. And what name did I give the folder? My food recipe. Excellent. So you can name your folder anything you want, right? So I'm going to make sure I save this file, this Notepad file, in our folder as a web page. What does that mean? So let's do that together. First of all, you click on file at the top left side, then you click save as. save as. Now the next thing you do is ensure you select your folder. I created mine on the desktop. So if I click desktop, then I'll scroll. Oh yes, I have my food recipe right here. So I click on my food recipe, then come down here and click open. To be sure you are correct, look up here. You see you have desktop and then my food recipe. That means you are in the right folder that we just created. So now I'm going to name my web page. So come down here to where you have file name, erase what you have in the untitled. You can give me whatever name you want, but I'm just going to name mine egusi soup recipe .html. Now it's very important that you save it as .html and you make sure you don't add space after the dot. So it's not like this. You don't add a space. You don't do a dot and then you add a space. No. So you just do whatever name you want to name your file .html because it is an HTML file. Okay, it's an HTML document. So you need to save it as .html. Right. Now I'm going to minimize this. Then we'll go back and open our folder again on the desktop. And then I want you to observe what is different this time. Now, if I open it, you see I have a file inside this folder called egusi soup recipe. And if you look closely, you'll see that the icon right beside it is my web browser, which in my own case is Brave. For you, it may be Chrome or Edge or Safari, depending on your device or depending on the browser you use. So this is how you know you have done it right. When you check here, you see it's showing with an icon of a web browser. And it's showing like this because we saved it as what? .html. So take note of that. If you don't have this, go back, rewind the video, follow the process step by step, and I'm sure you will get it right. Now let's get coding. Now I'm going to open my web page using two different applications on my computer. One is the web browser, of course, because it's a web page, and the other is our code editor, which is Notepad, like I said earlier. Don't forget, Notepad is the code editor we are using to edit our code, right? To write and create our code. So I'm just going to double click on it and that opens in the browser, or alternatively you can right click and click open. Yes, I've opened my web page now using my browser, and as you can see, it's blank. And that's of course because we have not written any code. Okay, so that makes sense. So I'll minimize this. Don't close it, just minimize it, let it remain open. Now let's open it using Notepad, okay, which is our code editor. So I'll right click on the document, click on open with, then on my list I find Notepad, right? I click on Notepad. See that? So to be sure you are correct, just look up here. For you, you may see just the name of your file without this .html, okay, depending on the computer you are using. So even if you still see .html, you are correct, you are good to go. All right, now the first thing is to create the basic structure of our HTML document, okay, a basic structure. And what does that mean? First thing we do is to write what is known as document declaration. What did I call it? Your document declaration. That's your doc type HTML. I'm going to zoom into this so you see it clearly. So this doc type.html is just simply known as your document declaration, right? So this is our document declaration for the current version of HTML, which is HTML5. Okay, so this is just a simple way to start your web page. Okay, so make sure you don't miss out on this. This is an exclamation mark right here, and there's just one space between doc type HTML. So doc is just short for document, and type, of course, has to do with what kind it is, and then HTML. Now the next thing is to then create opening and closing tag for HTML. Of course, it's an HTML web page, so HTML must begin it and HTML must also end it. Now take note, for our web page, the last thing we must have in this code is this closing tag of HTML. So that means you must ensure you do not type any code right after the HTML. So all you just have to keep doing is hit your enter button anywhere before this closing tag, and it pushes the closing tag down. So in this space right here is where we'll write all our remaining code. All right, all our remaining code is going to be right here. So the next thing that we will do, we're still creating the basic structure of our HTML page. Okay, we have not started creating the main work itself, because if I even check my web page now, I'm going to save, Control S on my keyboard, check my web page, I'll refresh, and as you can see, it's still blank. Okay, that's because we have not written any code. Right, all of this is just the basic structure. It's like you are still laying the foundation for your web page. You haven't started building on it. Okay, now the next part is to create the opening tag for head and closing tag for head. Now, why is this important? Now, the content in the head section of our website, of our web page, does not appear on the page. It's just very important for your browser. Okay, so it's not for the reader or the visitor of your website. It's the browser that needs this head section of your web page to be able to interpret your page better. Okay, as we advance in HTML, you understand that better. All right, now after that, the next thing for me to do is to create the opening tag for body, and of course the closing tag for body. Now if you take note of something I've been doing so far, every time I create the opening tag for a particular tag, I immediately create the closing tag, and that's to ensure that we don't make any mistakes, so that we don't miss out on any tag. Okay, so right here before us is the basic structure of your HTML document. Let's go over it again. The first thing we have is what? Doc type HTML, which is known as your document declaration. Then I created the opening tag of HTML, then the closing tag of what? HTML. Then in between it, which is called nesting, I nested the head tag, opening and the closing tag of head section of my website, and then I also nested the body opening tag and the body closing tag. Now, I explained earlier that the contents of the as I explained earlier, the main content of our website will be between this body tag. Of course, we can extend it further, while the other part of the website, which the browser, like I said, needs to interpret your page, will be in the head section. So it's time for us to begin to add content to our web page. So the first thing we are going to do, remember I showed you the outline, and one of the things that we saw in the outline is how to use the title tag. So what does the title tag do? So let's write that and see how that works. Okay, so I'll put title. And what is the title of our page? So of course it's called Egusi Soup Recipe. Egusi Soup Recipe. Now I'll show you where this title that is in the head section appears on the page, and you understand better. So I'm just going to refresh our page and you see what it does. All right, so now here is the web page. So I refresh now. Now I want you to take note of this top left corner. You see Egusi Soup Recipe, and then of course the name of my browser is showing up here. So this is the title of our web page. As you can see, it doesn't appear on the body of the page, this part here, because of course we have nothing in the body tag of our project. But here in the title, we have Egusi Soup Recipe, which is this title right here. So if I change this now, you observe that this will change as well. So take note, I'm going to change this so you see that this is where it's coming from. So I've changed the title now to Egusi Soup Recipe Test. So I'll go back, refresh the page. Do you see that now? Egusi Soup Recipe what? Test. So, but of course it's named Egusi Soup Recipe. So I'll change that, save again. Always make sure you save your work every time you make a change in Notepad. Then go to your web page, refresh, you see that? So it's just like when you are browsing on a website, right? So at the tab, you see the name of the page. So this is for this title. Now let's begin to create our finished project. Let's begin to add content to the body of our work. Now, as we create the project, I would like to be showing you the finished work so you see what we're about to create. And I also show you what we're building. Then you'll be able to compare, and then we'll make progress from there. So now we are right in the body section of our page. Don't forget that whatever you put in the body section of the page is meant to be on the main page of your web page, is the main content. All right, so let me show you the finished work now as we go on. So again, this is the finished work. As you can see at the top here, the first thing you have here is like the heading of your page, right? Like the heading of your page, which is the first thing you see. So let's create that. So we're going to use h1 tag to achieve that. Now I'm going to repeat. I've said it before. You see, every time I create the opening tag, immediately I do the closing tag before I even add any content in between. Okay, so now what do we have as the content of our page? I have egusi soup recipe with a colon, how to make egusi soup. I'm just going to copy this because of our time. You can type it out if you are creating a different recipe. So I'll save, and then I'll go refresh our web page that we're building. So as you can see, it has been added to our page, egusi soup recipe, how to make egusi soup. Now I can change the content if I want. Of course, I can say how to make delicious egusi soup. So I'll save, go to our page and refresh. So you see egusi soup recipe, how to make delicious egusi soup. And that was created using what? H1 tag. All right, now let's move on from there. Let's see the finished work. Now, what's the next thing you see? We see another heading right here, but it's smaller. And if you remember when I show you the outline, I explained that there are 6 different heading tags in HTML. That's H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, and H6. So if you see here, this what we're creating, this is H1, and H1 is the largest in size, while H6 is the smallest. So as you go from H1 to H2 to H3, your heading tag gets smaller. So we're going to use H2 to create the other part, which is this. Let me show you again. This would you like to create? Although for this finished work, I use H3, but for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to use H2. All right, so I've created my H2 tag. So that I'll say, what does the text say? It says, would you like to learn how to make? So I'm just going to copy this because of our time so that we don't take too long typing. I'm going to copy it and paste it here. So would you like to learn how to prepare delicious meals that your guests will love? You are in the right place. Today, I will teach you how to prepare delicious egusi soup. So I'll save again, go to our page, and then refresh. Woo! You see? Now, like I said, for this finished work, I use H3, so that's why it's smaller. But for the purpose of our tutorial, I'm using H2. And as you can see, this H2 is a little bigger than this H3. And of course, it is a little smaller than H1, which emphasizes what I explained. So if I change this to H3 and change the closing tag to H3, and then I save, Ctrl S on my keyboard, then come to the page and I refresh, what do you observe? It becomes smaller because now I am using H3 tag. All right, let's look at our finished work again. What's the next thing you see here? This was created using paragraph text. As you can see, it is smaller and it's not bold like this H1 and H3. So let's copy this content. Egusi soup is a traditional delicacy, and that. So let's come here. We do paragraph tag, which is P tag. Don't forget, always do your opening tag followed by your closing tag. So in between the tags, I will paste that content I had copied. Egusi soup is a traditional delicacy from the eastern part of Nigeria that is made using melon seeds. So I'll save my page again, then go to the browser, come to the page we are building, refresh. Woo! You see, that has been added. So we have successfully been able to add the H1, H3, and the paragraph tag to our project. Now let's look at the finished work. What is the next thing you see here after the H1, H3, and the paragraph? The next thing is our image, right? So that is where we will get to next. So the first thing we'll do is download the image into the folder we had created earlier. Don't forget, we created the folder on the desktop. Now, we want to download the image that we're going to use for our web page from the internet, okay? But before we do that, I will show you the folder that we created earlier. Now, this is the folder we created earlier. Remember, on the desktop, look up here, on the desktop, my food recipe. Yours would have been any name you wanted to. Now, there's only one file in this folder, and that is the web page we are creating. So at this point, there's only one file there. So let's go to our browser. You go to google.com so that we can download the image that we need. So I visit google.com. Of course, you have to be connected to the internet. So what food are we making in this project? We are making egusi soup. So I'm just going to type egusi soup and press enter. Then I go to the images. So I'm not going to look for anyone that you want to. Just choose any image that catches your fancy. So for me, I'm just going to click this. I'm going to click this. So first thing you do, make sure you click on the image. Take note of that. Click on the image. Then it will appear on the right hand side, or depending on the browser you are using, it will pop up in the center of your screen. So instead of on the right hand side as this one, it may be in the center, but you must make sure you click on the image. Now the next thing is to now save it to your computer. So right click on the image like I have done. I'll do that again. Right click on the image, come down, you see save image as. Click on save image as. Then you have a dialog box that opens on the left hand side. Now here is where you need to pay close attention, because now you have to ensure that you save the image in the folder we had created earlier. So I will click on desktop, which is where the folder is created. Desktop, and I'll look for my folder. Can you remind me the name of the folder we created? Very good, it's right here, my food recipe. Click on the folder and click open down here. So to be sure you are correct, look up here, you see desktop and you see my food recipe. I'm going to stretch this so you see it clearly. Desktop, my food recipe. That way you know that you are saving it in the right folder. So I'll come here and you rename your image. Okay, give it a very simple name. What are we creating? Egusi soup. Whatever name you have here, you can just erase it and give it a very simple, easy to remember name. For example, if you are making a pancake recipe web page, you name it pancake. And if you are making jollof rice, what do? You name it jollof rice. Simple and short. So I'll name my egusi soup. Then I click save. If you didn't get the steps, please just rewind the video, go back and watch it so you ensure you get the steps. So I'll minimize my web page, or I can close it if I want. So minimize it, and then when I come back to the folder, I want you to observe something. Now I have two files in my food recipe folder. I have the web page egusi soup recipe, then I have the image egusi soup, so I can open it to see the image. So can you see that now? Yes, that's the image right there. So I have downloaded the image to my folder. The next thing is for us to add it to our web page. At this point, our web page, this is it, does not have any image. Can you see that? So let's go back to our code. Now the next thing is to add the image. Now in the outline that I showed you, adding the image, you use the img tag followed by src equals to, then you add your double quotations rather. Then you add your double quotation marks. So to get that, you press shift and press the quotation key on the keyboard. Then another double quotation mark, then your less than sign. This is the simple line of code to add an image to your web page. But that's not all. We need two more things to make it complete. img, of course, is short for image. Then src is short for source, right? Is short for source, and source is where something is coming from. Okay, now we need two more things to make our image appear on the screen, because even if I save this and I go to my web page and I refresh, You can see, of course, no image is showing, right? Yes, because we're not done yet. So now I'm going to ask you, what name did I save the file I downloaded with? Let's go back to the folder now. Look at the folder. Look at the image I downloaded. What is the name? The file name is what? Egusi soup. So we need two things to add to our web page to make that image show. Number one, I need the name of the file and I need the file extension. So I'll right click on the image and look for properties on my drop down. Properties, okay? Click on properties. Now take a look at these properties. The name of the file, of course, is Egusi soup, and the type of file is what? JPG file with the extension .jpg. For yours, it may be .png or .webp or whatever, .jfif. It could be whatever file extension. It doesn't make any difference, okay? All you have to do is take note of the file extension. So for me, the name of the file is Egusi soup. So I'll highlight and copy it. So highlight, right click, and you click copy. That way I have copied the name of the file. Then I will also make sure I don't forget the file extension, which is .jpg. Okay, so I can click OK to close this and minimize my folder. Now I'll come back to your web page, and then I will paste the name of the file, Egusi soup. Then what is our file extension? Do you remember? Yes, .jpg. So for yours, it can be .png depending on the image you have downloaded. Okay, so now I will save this and then I will refresh our web page. Wow, as you can see, the image has been added to our web page. Excellent, easy, right? But for this to work so easily, you have to make sure that you have downloaded the image and saved it to the same folder where your web page is located. Now, my web page and my image are both in the same folder. That's why I could easily add this image to my web page as I have just done. So the next thing, if we look at the finished work, let me ask you, what is the next thing? I'll scroll down. What's the next thing you see? A heading tag followed by a list, right? So that will be our next task. Are you ready for that?